who do you sell to? Who's your ideal profile person you'd want to reach on the phone? Okay, great. So large consumer packaged goods companies. Who, operations person, a marketing person. What's the job title? Okay, perfect. So we would go to Twitter and we would use Twitter's search function and we would say, okay, Twitter, show me everyone who lists somewhere in their profile that they work at one of these 7 companies and that they list their job title as being in occupational safety, OSHA, some of these keywords that you know, and we'll get back and we'll get 30 people back, let's say, and so we start following them. They're going to see your profile, they're going to see you're following them, they're going to click through, they might read a really compelling profile, but then they're only seeing 2 tweets and they're both 3 weeks old. And they're going to make the decision not to follow you back, and you never get the chance to follow them again. You never get the chance, the second chance to make a first impression. So before you start saying, the first thing I would do is I would post 8 or 10 or 12 pretty compelling, interesting tweets. I would then identify who I want to reach by job title, geography, place that they work. I would follow them when they visit your profile. You want them to see a lot of activity, and then every day, you want to keep producing enough content so that they want to keep coming back and reading the information that you're putting out. So yeah, I think consistency not only with tone, but consistency with the amount of content you're putting out is pretty important. Great. All right. Another local Twitter example here. So we've got Jack Hanna. Jack Hanna has about 2,000 followers. And if we look at some of the things, and again, we can look at his bio here. You've got to have about 150 characters to word your bio. So talk about, we did the exercise earlier of making your biography. You've got a really short space here. The reason that's important is because when that person at Procter & Gamble is looking for a consultant for occupational safety, they're going to go to Twitter and they're going to search Occupational Safety Expert Ohio. And if you don't have those keywords in your bio, you're never going to come up. So it's great to have things that you like, downhill skiing and your raised Dalmatians, but if you're using this for your business, it's more important. Put in the keywords that you think your audience is going to be searching for. I'll digress for a second here. A lot of people talk about how search and social media are getting really gray. And if you've done a search on Google recently, you've probably seen the results are a Twitter stream, a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page. Google's returning social media pages in their search results. The other thing is that people are bypassing search engines altogether and going right to places like Twitter and YouTube to search, Twitter and YouTube specifically. If YouTube were a search engine, more searches are done every day on YouTube than on Yahoo and MSN. I talked to someone at the last conference I was at, and he said, I'm learning to play guitar. I'm self-taught. I go to YouTube every day, and I search on the song I want to sing. And so using social media as a search engine. I use the Jack Hanna example here again. Look at his tweets, and again, to Ken's point, look at the frequency here. We're seeing these released on a pretty regular basis here. He's talking about his personal life. He's talking about animals. He's using keywords. He's retweeting content from the Columbus Zoo. All of this is very, very consistent with Jack Hanna. Does Jack Hanna have a very different brand personality than Andrea Camburn? I mean, Jack Hanna is kind of, it's more absent-minded and silly, genuine, cares about, conservation, environmental issues, but not the, polished image that Andrea Camburn presents. Very, very different images, and you wouldn't expect their tweets, not only the content to be the same, but the tone, you would expect to be very, very different. Part of that defining who you are. Are you the person that's always going to be very, very strict and business-oriented? Are you going to intersperse personal stories? Are you going to be, what's the level of tone that you want to set with your brand and carry that through to the things that you're tweeting? All right, talking a little bit about what a social network is, and again, I think we all know a lot of these, but word-of-mouth marketing is the oldest form of marketing there is. People talking to their uncle at Thanksgiving dinner about what kind of car to buy. What has changed with social media is now, if your uncle writes a blog about what kind of car to buy, he's not influencing one person, he's influencing tens of people or hundreds of people or thousands of people that read his blog. But it's an online meeting place where people either create content, like writing that blog, share content. So if you ever see that share this button on a web page, if you ever forwarded an email or forwarded a video, interact with content like voting content up or down, and it's all built around content, which can be a blog, a video, a tweet, any piece of material. Here's some examples of the most common ones. Today we're mainly going to talk about Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. There's dozens and dozens we could talk about today, but we want to focus on the ones that are probably going to drive most of your business. And one of the questions was, how do I make sure I'm not spending too much time on this? Part of this is really defining where your audience gathers and reaching them there. I'm going to talk a little bit about who's using social media, and then I'll turn over to Kent here to kind of comment on the growth and what he's seeing. But there was a time a year ago when you had to spend time convincing people that their audience was on social media. I think that's over now, whether your audience is executives or working moms or personal trainers, they're using some form of social media. 75% plus of college students, 60% of the wealthy. Facebook's fastest growing demographic is 50 and over, followed by 41 to 55. The average age on Twitter gets older every time they do this. It's now up to 31 years old, relatively high income, generally speaking, professional environments. If you look at when Twitter is used, there's a big spike during the workday when you see a heavy use from professional usage. One of the reasons Twitter, I think, kind of changed the landscape is most social media was adopted first by teens and the entertainment industry, and then by everyone else. Twitter was adopted first by the government and the media. And once the government and the media used it, all of us who sell to government and try to get media attention had to start using it to communicate with them. YouTube, for those of you who remember from Marketing 101, it indexes at a 100, which means it's an exact representation of the overall internet population. If 51% of all internet users are women, then 51% of all YouTube users are women. It's a perfect representation of the overall internet population. And Twitter, when I talked about Twitter a year ago, I was saying there were 8 million users, and everyone said, wow, it's growing fast. And in December, I said 24 million. Now it's over 100 million, and part of this is, it's just like email was in 1995. We said we weren't going to get on email, and then you had to because that's the way your kids' school started communicating with you, and you had to use it at work. Now we're almost being forced into it because it's the way that brands and professionals and our sanitation department and our city council members and everyone else is choosing to communicate with us. So, any comments on kind of the growth overall? Or?
Well, I did want to add at least one thing here in terms of purpose and the reason it's grown. I talked with a friend who had taken even using social media at the television station side of things. 7 years ago, this was new for when I worked at Channel 4. We've got to find a way to provide content outside of just over the TV airwaves or what have you. And this young man has taken his expertise developed there to Ohio State, and he's working with the medical center there. And just visiting with him a couple of weeks ago, he said, you got to remember purpose. You want to write these 4 things down, by the way. You might have even told him this back in the day, because it sounded really smart. I thought, I got to write those 4 things down. The whole purpose for social networking is to listen. You're going to back me up on this? To listen, to respond, to influence, and to enlist. And as I started letting that sink in a little bit there, listen, respond, influence, and enlist, I went, oh, some of that has been intuitive in learning how to use a Facebook connection, or more prominently for me, a LinkedIn connection, to use some of these things to say, okay, I want to understand, and for those of us in business with our own companies, I want to understand what my customers think or what's important to them. And on down the line, I will respond to what their concerns are or what they need. And that influencing and enlisting, hey, I can do this for you. Be part of my team, whether that's come join my business venture or buy a product from me or whatever. Those 4 words there, I was thinking about preparing to talk with you today. I thought, ooh, I'm going to share those. I don't know if that was helpful.
That's great. I'm going to try to go without a net and see if I can give a good example of each one of those here. So on the listening, and one of the things we always say is, the temptation, and people have told me, well, I tried social media and I failed. And I said, well, what'd you do? I said, well, I set up a Twitter account and I told everyone about my great services. And of course you failed, because the first step is, you get a whole lot more value from listening than from talking. We do work with, I'll use the example, work with Ohio Health here locally. One of the things that they use social media for is they're listening to hear what local women talk about when they talk about women's health issues. And they're gathering all this, and they're learning about work and life balance and breast cancer awareness and dealing with stress and dealing with the workplace and all these things. And then they're saying, we're going to build a community and a portal around that. Now, they could have done a lot of focus groups and market research, or they could have just built something and said, this is the content we're going to provide. But first they listened and said, women in Central Ohio in these zip codes, when they're on social media, talk about these 4 things. We're going to make a community for them to interact and talk about those 4 things.